month or 6 weeks. I said, well, that sounds like fun. Can I go with you? Yeah, sure. So, I really didn't have a good sense of what I was getting myself into, and which in a way was a good thing because I had no expectations, right? So I went into it with no expectations, didn't bring a lot of, I knew that I had to bring certain things to keep safe, and, like I brought my tent as well. I brought some, a lot of sunscreen and, a lot of water, and I brought food and all that. But I didn't, like nowadays I have this whole like wardrobe that I bring with me. Back then I just was like, okay, I got shorts and t-shirts. That's good, and it was good. So I drove up with 4 other guys, including this friend of mine. We drove up in a tourist station wagon, totally loaded with things, and we had the roof rack was had things piled on like 4 feet high on top of it. But it was a really good experience. I mean, within an hour of being there, I just thought, okay, I'm gonna do this again. This is something else.
And here we are, 16 trips later.
Yeah.
And so what is?
Have you been?
No, I have not. We actually we took on our first festival this summer here in Colorado at Arise, and I know it's nothing compared. But even the two of us kind of thinking that we're way more hippie-like than we ever were, what our parents would like us to be, and then going there, we were like, oh, we're not even close to being hippies, and so Jimmy is kind of sworn off, trying to take on that experience, but I'm still intrigued by it, and at some point in time would like to make my way there. Maybe not for the entire experience, but at least for a few days, because you hear different people's experiences, and I know Tim Ferriss has said that like there are people that are not even on anything that can have psychotic breaks just from being so different than anything that they've ever encountered. So I really want to put some research and some intention into it before I just kind of go there for just a party experience.
Yeah, it makes sense.
What's the evolution been like since 2001 to now in terms of the growth and what you've seen?
Well, it's much, much bigger. Although when I went in 2001, I think there were about 20,000 people there, which was by far, I think there was a period of about 3, 4, or 5 years or so where the population roughly doubled, and that was about the third. It might have been the next to last year where the population was roughly doubling, or maybe the last year where it was doubling. So then it continued to climb pretty rapidly. I think this year that people were saying there were 80,000 people there this year.
Wow.
And 3, 4 years it was like 60,000. So that alone really changes the experience of it. Like, you can still find a place at Burning Man. You can ride your bike or walk out to the far reaches of the whole thing. There's what they call the trash fence, which the wind blows out towards the trash fence. So things that get blown by the wind hopefully will get caught by this plastic netting trash fence, right? And you could go out there and, there aren't many people out there typically, but also sometimes there are gatherings. Meet me at 11 o'clock in trash fence, things like that. But when I went in 2001, it was the spaces in a way seemed more vast because you as soon as you got out into the open, what they call playa, you got into the open playa, you'd see, oh, there's a light over there. What is that? Is that big duck vehicle we saw? Oh no, that's the Jazz Cafe or something like that, And it just seemed like things were so far from each other, and it made things seem more vast in a way. And now there's just a lot more going on. There are a lot more people, and so it seems less big, even though it's in some ways it's a bigger space. I think they actually enlarged it at least once. I don't know if they've reduced in size ever, but and then they've been playing with the actual dimensions of the place. But at the core, it's really the same. It's really the same thing. It's a lot harder to get there and back out though because of the lines. That's something I really miss. Is just being able to drive in and not have a long line of people. Driving out is actually, in some ways, more difficult than going in, and you tend to be exhausted or sleep deprived and ready to get home.
And so, are you still bringing a tent? Or are you RVing it now? How has the evolution for you gone?
Only brought an RV one time, and that was actually I went with my wife and our 5-month-old kid. So we took an RV so we'd have a place to have him at all times, and a place where we had air conditioning in the middle of the day and things like that. But I've really just been taking tents. For a few years I took 2 tents because I had 2 campsites where the friend that I drove up there with, she was camped in one place, and I wanted to camp with a particular camp that I'd found, and it was just definitely my home. So I had two tents set up that I could go to. But yeah, that's what I've been doing, and in some ways it's been getting more push for me because, like this year, I went and I borrowed a friend's tent, and I wasn't even sure I was going to go. And then with a couple weeks ago, I just said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go. And so I borrowed a friend's tent. I went up. I had a bike with me, and my friend and I drove up. And my campmates, who I've been camping with since 2012, made it so easy. We got there in the early evening. No, it was more like 10 o'clock on Sunday night. And the people in my camp had figured out where we were going to set our tent up, and they guided us in with the car and everything, and they said, here's where you can camp here if you want to. And turned out the tent just barely fit there. It was a perfect fit. It was easy to set up, and we had shade cover, which is one of the most important things you can have there, is to have shade cover. So there was this shade netting over most of the camp, and that was covering our tent. And so my campmates had just said, basically, you've got a home here, just set up. So that was delightful. It was the easiest setup and the best camp setup I've had.
Is it just the overall experience in itself that keeps you coming back? Is it are you into the music scene or the art scene?
The main thing for me is the people that I see there, and that's people who I've camped with before. I get a chance to see them and hang out with them, and that's my favorite thing about it. But I also always meet somebody I didn't know before, and it's really those profound connections with people, and intertwined with that, I'd say it's what I consider to be a magical atmosphere where people are just making all sorts of synchronicities happen, and it's a riot. I mean, that we're able to create what we want to create there is the main thing that keeps me coming back, aside from being able to do that with really good friends. So the art, I like the art, and sometimes I've been awed by the art. Sometimes I've just thought, the temple at the Burn. I don't know if you've heard about the temple, but the temple, there's always a temple, and it's always in line with the man up. So the man is at the very center of the whole thing, and at 12 o'clock from the man is where the temple is going to be, and that's where people, it's where people leave kind of memorial pieces and things honoring deceased loved ones, or they will release things, from their lives, and that is something else. It's almost like a different world inside of Burning Man because of how solemn and reverent it is. It just it's something else, and I've never anywhere else or at any time been in a setting that was better for eliciting that pure grief, that pure. I can't. It's hard to even describe, but it's such a great place to, if you've had a parent or a family member or a close friend who's died, to be able to go there and do something in their memory is something else. And the atmosphere is at the temple it's very hard to describe. But as soon as I got there this year, I had a really profound experience. So it's something else.
I've heard some pretty intense stories from people's experiences with that. Top 3 tips for a first timer.
Let's see. Top 3 tips for first timer. Okay, yeah. They're really kind of physical survival sorts of tips. First one is, make sure you drink lots of water. So there will be water available, but take your own water. Drink lots of water. Be prepared for the sun, and particularly be prepared for the sun and the intensity of the heat in the daytime. And also be prepared for the dust. So one of the hardest things for me over the years actually has been just dealing with the dust. And so I need to make sure I've got a good, like a dust mask, or at the very least I've got a bandana that I can wet down and breathe through that to keep the dust from getting into my lungs, because I've come back a few times and just had what they call playa lung. You're just coughing up phlegm for a couple of weeks. I think the dust can be pretty heinous, and so I try to breathe as little of that as possible. And the other thing with the dust is that it gets into your cuticles, and it's very alkaline, and you get totally dried out. So a lot of people have trouble with their feet with getting the dust, and so if you don't have a good enclosed pair of shoes that can keep the dust out, or if you don't, at the end of the day, clean your feet, put lotion on your feet, and put socks over your feet so the lotion can soak into your feet. I personally haven't had trouble with my feet, but my hands, and that may be largely because I like to use sanitizing wipes and hand sanitizer after I hit the porta potty. But that dries your hands out too. But my experience in the past has been where the cuticles in my hand hurt so much. It's just like it's not a constant problem, but it's something that it's very bothersome, and you can avoid that by just making sure to moisturize and have a good hand cream and use it. Coconut oil is really good for that too. So one of the best tips I had for that was dip your hands in coconut oil and then put your work gloves on. When you're setting up your camp, dip your hands in coconut oil, your clean hands in coconut oil, then put them in the gloves with the coconut oil on them and let that soak in while you're doing whatever work you're doing to set up your camp. And so I did that. The first year I had no problems with my hands was when I did that. And I was there for longer than I had been before. I set up the camp, the entire camp infrastructure with some friends. And so, but that saved me. That was when I finally learned how to deal with that. That was 2012. So up until then, I'd been having varyingly, difficulties with pain in my hands to varying degrees. So, yeah, those are my tips. Dust, heat, water.
Hydrate or die, always.
Yeah.
Tom, we really appreciate you coming on. We got one last thing for you. One of the things we're really big on over here at the Airey Bros is just helping people level up every day and living their best version of themselves as much as possible.